I'm Alex Hetherington, and welcome to Guide London. Guide London is the website of some nearly 600 licensed, registered London blue badge tourist guides. And normally, at this time of year, we're showing visitors, showing you around our great city. And the great city is actually beginning to get going again. There are open air venues that have opened to the public now. Galleries, museums, pubs, they'll begin their opening through July, starting from next week. But even so, travel is difficult. And we're not seeing particularly international visitors for quite some time. So we're continuing our project of bringing London out to the world. Through Twitch, through YouTube, through Facebook Live, we're actually now into the 14th week of Monday, Wednesday and Friday broadcasts at this time on history topics, culture topics. For instance, a great broadcast on Royal London, on changing of the guard. Look that one up on our past broadcasts and you'll really enjoy it. And a favourite of mine, you'd have to go back to April the 27th for a really fantastic tour that was on Sherlock Holmes and Hercule Poirot, on London sleuths. I think you'll really enjoy that one. In July, we shift slightly. We're going to be reporting live from various different locations around London and reporting on the opening up of London venues. So each of the programs will have several segments and many of them coming from different parts of town. Well, June is Pride Month and it's being vigorously lived online. But last weekend would have been London's Pride Parade. The wonderful celebration of culture, of a call to action. And so as we're not able to take to the streets, we're taking to the airways. I'm going to introduce two of my colleagues, Danielle and also Dani, and their guests. They've invited Joseph Galliano, and Joseph is from our topic for today is, as you can probably tell, Proud London. We're going to go first of all to Danielle. I'll take the rest of us off the screen and then on through our broadcast.
Thank you, Alex. So hello everybody, my name is Danielle Harte. Many of you may know me as Dani the Guide. So you've got two Danis for the price of one today. But you might remember me from the Curiosities of London broadcast that we did, and also the Changing the Guard broadcast for Royal London, which Alex so kindly mentioned that was one of his favourites. But today I'm going to talk to you about LGBT plus history. And that's my topic. So I'm going to be discussing the history, whereas my colleague Dani will tell you where the hotspots are for today's community and their allies. And then we'll have Joseph talking about Queer Britain Museum. So the LGBTQA plus community, well, it's an extremely diverse one. And it's a community that have always been marginalized for wanting to exist against the normative values of society. And we've even had kings and queens who have dabbled in same-sex relationships. Going back to the 11th century in 1087, this is William II, William the Conqueror's son. And when he became king, he was often described as effeminate, with a keen interest in young, fashionable men at court. Another king that is worth mentioning from early on is Richard the Lionheart, also known as Richard I, who became king in 1189. But he spent most of his time off on crusades, and he developed a close relationship with King Philip II of France. And it's said that they ate from the same plate and that their beds did not separate them. Now, in this country, acts of sodomy were not actually made illegal through state law until the reign of King Henry VIII. And he introduced the laws that made male-to-male sexual acts punishable by death. If you were found to be attempting gay sex, then you would be jailed for 2 years. This law was not revised until the 19th century when the death penalty was removed, but you could still be jailed. And it was at this point that it was now termed gross indecency. Now, in terms of lesbian history, one high-profile member of court was Queen Anne. Now, Queen Anne became queen in 1702, and she was known for her romantic relationship formed with Sarah Churchill, and they referred to each other in letters as Mrs. Morley and Mrs. Freeman. But Sarah started to have political sway over the Queen, which caused them eventually to rift and argue and seeing them separate. And it's round about this point when the Queen's affection is rumoured to have been transferred to one Abigail Massam. You might remember this from the film The Favourite, starring Olivia Colman, Emma Stone, and Rachel Weisz, where Olivia Colman won the Oscar. But sex between two women. Now, it's never actually been made legal, despite many discussions in Parliament to make it so. The myth has always been that Queen Victoria, who was the Queen in the 19th century, had the view of, Alex, next slide, lesbianism. No such thing could ever exist between two women. But actually, it wasn't anything to do with Queen Victoria's disbelief. It was Parliament. Parliament decided that if they actually admitted to it existing and making it illegal, then it would encourage a whole new generation to try it. So it was never made law. But for homosexual law, the major changing point was the 20th century. By 1954, over 1,000 men were in prison, with an average age of about 37 years old. What was their offence? Gross indecency, homosexuality. And with a significant rise in trials that included high-profile actors like John Gielgud and the aristocracy, the Conservative government set up a committee under John Wolfenden to look into homosexual offences. And the cover of the report you see before you now is the 1957 Wolfenden Report, the department set up under John Wolfenden. And it advised the British government to make homosexuality legal. But unfortunately, it would take another 10 years until the 1967 Sexual Offences Act to decriminalise homosexuality between two men over the age of 21 in private actually came into effect. And it only came into effect in England and Wales. Elsewhere in Britain, it actually remained illegal. It wasn't until 1980 in Scotland that it was decriminalised, and in 1982, decriminalised in Northern Ireland. But what the 1967 Sexual Offences Act did was to provide a community with a right to be, even if very restricted. And so this became a way forward to now gain the most basic of human rights, equality. And activist groups led the charge. Some of the earlier groups include the Beaumont Society for Transsexuals, Crossdressers and Transvestites, founded in London. Then the group SHE, or the Campaign for Homosexual Equality. And in 1970, the Gay Liberation Front was founded at the London School of Economics. And they were founded out of a response to the Stonewall riots that occurred on the 28th of June, 1969 in New York. And in 1972, this was the year London saw its first ever gay rally, with an attendance of just over 700 people marching from Trafalgar Square to Hyde Park. This today is a gay rally known as Pride, and it is one of the biggest events on the LGBTQA+ calendar, usually with over 30,000 people marching. Now, 2 days ago, on Saturday, would have been the official Pride Parade. But while a lot of online broadcasts were being had, Peter Tatchell and other members of the original Gay Liberation Front actually marched into central London to celebrate their 50th anniversary and still march for human rights. Go to the next slide, Alex, please. And it seemed that equality for this once marginalized group was on its way up. But with the outbreak of AIDS and the gay community receiving the brunt of the blame, life became difficult. And then under the regime of Margaret Thatcher in 1988 came one of the most incomprehensible legislative acts that was called Section 28. And it stated that local authorities shall not promote the teaching of the acceptability of homosexuality as a pretended family relationship. As a response, the Stonewall UK group was set up to oppose Section 28. And thanks to protests from activist groups like Rebel Dykes and the Gay Liberation Front and, well, popular faces in the mainstream coming out as gay, like Sir Ian McKellen, Section 28 was eventually removed in 2000 in Scotland and 2003 here in England and Wales. 2004 was quite a momentous occasion with the Civil Partnership Act coming into effect, allowing same-sex couples to right to a civil partnership, giving them some of the same rights as heterosexual couples. And since 2014, same-sex marriage is now recognised, but not until 2020 in Northern Ireland. That's this year. And it is still only 22 countries around the world that recognise same-sex marriages. And it's still illegal to be gay in 73 countries, 12 of which still enforce the death penalty. So the struggle is still very real. But the leaps and bounds that Britain has made in the last half of the 20th century is still one to be celebrated, which is why Pride History Month and the Pride Festival is one of the most important events on the LGBTQA+ annual calendar, as a means to celebrate and create awareness for others who are still hiding and still suffering. So happy Pride with that. And here you can see me marching 2 years ago with the Royal College of Nursing, the Royal Colleges of Nursing. Now, I want to hand over at this point to my colleague, Dani, who's going to tell you where you can find all of these hotspots in London.
Thank you, Dani. And hello, everyone. Happy Pride Month. I hope you've had a great Pride weekend. Again, I'm Dani Parlour, London Blue Badge Tourist Guide, live from North London. And I'm here to continue where Dani finished, and would like to share with you what there is to see in LGBTQ London today. And I think when it comes to diversity, there really is no other place like London, and the city frequently tops the list of best LGBTQ destinations to visit. London is one of the friendliest, LGBT friendliest cities in the world as well, and from my experience feels very safe. And in general, for everyone, it's just a fantastic place to visit for all sorts of reasons: culture, shopping, food, sport, entertainment. But the following things I want to share with you are specific to the LGBTQ plus community, but also anyone who wants to get involved and have a good time and be an ally. And I think the message is everybody is welcome. There's many LGBTQ events taking place in London throughout the year. And first up, one of my favourites, LGBT History Month. That takes place each February. And the overall aim of LGBT History Month is to promote equality and diversity, and for the benefit of the public. The first LGBT History Month took place in 2004, thanks to educator and disability rights activist Sue Sanders. And hundreds of events can be found on the calendar page each year, and everyone's welcome to contribute their own events, which include LGBT talks, tours, film nights, quizzes, museum lates, much more. And the website LGBT History Month is a great resource for educators, students and parents alike as well. And it's all operated by a charity called Schools Out. If you could just head to the next slide, Alex, thanks. And this time of year, we have February half terms. We have 6 half terms a year in the UK. And with LGBT History Month in mind, the National Maritime Museum in South East London dedicate this half term as Rainbow Week. If you could just head to the next slide, please. And it includes special themed workshops for families and adults. For the kids, we've got Razzle Dazzle, which celebrates 20 years of inclusion within the Royal Navy. And kids were encouraged to create their own rainbow ships inspired by the amazing Dazzle ships in the collection. And we have Express Yourself, where children were asked to make highly adorned masks inspired by drag culture to explore self-expression. And they were asked to look around the museum for symbols, from mermaids to rainbows, to help decorate their masks. So lots of fun. And for adults, well, at one of the National Maritime Museum's sister museums, if you will, the Queen's House, it had a fabulous museum lake called Fierce Queens House of Queers, which sold out. And that event included an evening of gender diverse performances and immersive experiences, which showcase queer power in what is a former royal residence. And it's an event I missed out on, actually. I would have loved to have gone. If we could head to the next slide, please, Alex. So now we have Tate Galleries. Now, they're one of the major art organisations which put on regular LGBT events in London. And I would encourage everyone to visit if they're in London, because it's only 15 minutes walk south of Big Ben, and it's very much a hidden gem. And Historic Royal Palaces. So this is one of the first major heritage organisations to join the Pride Parade. If you search #PalacePride, it's a fantastic organisation, very inclusive, and a former employer of mine who are very much in need now. So please check their website and just search LGBT in the search engine and you'll find this page. So most major museums in London now have a whole host of LGBTQ+ events as part of their regular public programmes, mostly in February and in June, but increasingly throughout the year too, which I think is great and how it should be. All heritage organisations in London have their own items, have items that have a queer history in some way, but they're integrated within their own collection, which is great, but which is a reason why you might want to book a Blue Badge tourist guide to help bring them out of the closet, if you will. But plans are underway to open a specific museum to focus on queer culture in the UK, which Joe will cover later on. Now, I mentioned June is Pride Month, a time when we come together all around the world to show solidarity as a community and celebrate ourselves. And there's over 60 Pride parades in the UK. And most of these begin in June and continue through July and August. The rest take place pretty much every month of the year except November, December, because it's just too cold. And we've had an official Pride parade, as Dani mentioned, since 1972. And today, as you can see in the map, it starts to the north. So this is slap bang in the centre of London. Starts to the north at Park Crescent, makes its way directly south all the way to Trafalgar Square, which is the official centre of London. And usually the day after now, we have UK Black Pride, which is a really important event in the LGBTQ calendar. And it last took place in Haggerston Park, East London. And this is Europe's largest celebration for African, Asian, Middle Eastern, Latin American, and Caribbean heritage LGBTQ people and allies. And Pride in London and UK Black Pride, and I think nearly all UK Prides, do operate as charities. So please see their websites and donate what you can. They're very much in need at the moment. And they're running lots of events online, which you can get involved with. Next, we have the Pride Run 10K, which takes place each August in Victoria Park in East London, the first public park in London. And it's a not-for-profit organised by volunteers from London Frontrunners, an inclusive running club for LGBT and gay-friendly people. And it was announced just earlier today that they're going to be asking everyone to individually run the 10K and record it virtually instead. Now, we have a map of London, and right in the middle, you see that kind of green section, Soho. Well, this, I think, is fair to say, the centre of gay London, at least for the last 40 years, perhaps before that Earl's Court in South Kensington. And I think everyone, you know, under the rainbow living in London or visiting London will at some point gravitate to Soho at some point for something. It's an area made up of mostly 18th century multi-floor terraced buildings. And during the day, imagine lots of office workers in this area, cute cafes, bars, restaurants. And in the evening, becomes the entertainment district. And Soho, and within Soho, or a short walk from Soho, this is where you'll find most gay bars, pubs, clubs in London, and specialist gay retailers as well, mostly on our Old Compton Street. There's lots of places to eat too. But I don't know about you, but I'm feeling quite thirsty at the moment. And Soho's nightlife, or day life for some people, can be a bit of a maze. So let's go on a bit of a bar crawl. Oh, sorry, I forgot this slide. This is Soho Square, where you can drink in the day, especially on the Pride Parade if you want to. And it's just a great place to people watch, relax in the sun. But yeah, it's a must to check out on the day of the Pride Parade usually. And let's continue with the actual bars themselves. So first up, we have GAY Bar, which is a great start for cheap pre-drinks and fabulous music too. Expect all of the best pop songs. And thank you. And next we have Compton's, which I think is fair to say the grand dame of Soho, having served the community since the 1980s. This is where you can have a dance by the main bar or have a chat upstairs with friends. And this is the Admiral Duncan. So this is one of the oldest pubs on Old Compton Street. It has a cabaret bar. It's lots of fun. It's one of the smaller venues, but perfectly formed. And I find these smaller venues are much more friendly. This is She Soho on Old Compton Street. It's a very popular lesbian bar. And this is the entrance. It's teeny tiny. So if you're heading there, do take care not to just walk past it. Next, we have Village Bar, which is great for cocktails. And if you head there on the weekend, expect to see Go-Go Boys dancing on the bar and resident DJs as well. Next, we have Rupert Street Bar. And this is a much bigger venue to be found in the area, which is great as they're hard to come by. I think it's more of a premium gay bar, very generous happy hour timings as well. Again, great cocktails and other drinks. And it's great for people watching as well. All of the seats are lined along the windows. And this is the Friendly Society, which is quite unique. It's kind of an out of this world kind of decor. And I describe it as like bubblegum pink and blue everywhere with Barbie dolls over the ceiling and plants as well. There's even a fish tank down there. And again, it has a tiny entrance. I'm sure you'll walk past it, but go back and find it. And next, probably the largest bar in Soho of its kind. This is the Yard. And it's multiple floors, and it's sandwiched or nestled between these tall terraced neighbours. And it has a wonderful outdoor courtyard to begin with, and upstairs, a couple of floors, a loft bar as well. And Coup Club, this is one of the more recently refurbished gay bars in the area, and great music, pretty intimate though. Probably would just pop in here for a drink and head on somewhere else. It can get extremely busy. Next, we have GAY Late, and this isn't too far from GAY Bar, maybe 10 minutes walk, if that depends how many drinks you've had. And I would recommend, this is like just a club version of the bar, but get your reduced wristbands from GAY Bar before coming to GAY Late. And next, Heaven. Now, this is a super famous, huge club under the arches just off of Villiers Street. It's been there since 1979. And anyone who's anyone has performed there. Madonna, Kylie Minogue, Rihanna, Beyonce. And this is where you can see many queens from RuPaul's Drag Race as well, week to week. So it's a must to check out, and you could spend all night there. And this is Retro Bar, which is just a few minutes walk from Heaven. And it's a real hidden gem, I think. Often, you know, if you want to escape the crowds, head here. And it has quite a theatrical decor, relaxed vibe. So that's central London, that's Soho. Now we're moving to East London, where I think the vibe is a bit more edgier and vibrant. This is Dalston Superstore. You can have vegan brunches in the day, and by night it turns into a club. And next we have Bethnal Green Men's Working Club, which is a really fun, inclusive venue. And they have all kinds of events like Disco 54 to Bat Mitzvah. And next we have The Glory. Smaller venue, more of a pub in East London, very friendly again, and it often does pop-up events at other venues like the Empire in East London, where they hold a now infamous Halloween ball. And now we're heading to South London. So this is the Eagle, recently refurbished, has a great dance floor, space for smokers outside, good range of drinks, regular promotions, and Sunday nights are reserved for the infamous Horsemeat Disco, which you can look up yourselves. Next, we have the Two Brewers, which is a really big fun venue. Features a bar, drag acts, and the other half is a club. And I like the size of this. It's like two big spaces, but still feel quite intimate. But I think my favourite venue might be Royal Vauxhall Tavern. And this is the first gay entertainment venue to become a listed protected building. It's now grade 2, so grade 1 being the highest. And it's a very fun venue, just one big space, circular space around a stage. And it can fit over around 250 people standing. And a great story about this venue. In the 1980s, Princess Diana snuck out of Kensington Palace, dragged up as a man, and went dancing there with Freddie Mercury, no less. And she never got spotted. If only those kind of things happen today. Next, we have now we're done with the bars, but this is above the Stag Theatre in the area, so just a couple of minutes from the Royal Vauxhall Tavern in Vauxhall. And this is their new premises. So above the Stag Theatre is the only LGBT theatre in the country. And it's just a really unique venue for a theatre, but the shows are so funny. And especially, you've got to try and get tickets here for pantomime. Friends of mine might shoot me for saying book now, but they're open now. But yeah, they often sell out. And next we have Gaze the Word Bookstore, which is a really special LGBT business in London. It's just 5 or 10 minutes walk from Bloomsbury, and it's the only LGBT bookstore in London, only one of 3 in the country, with the others being in Glasgow and Bristol. And they're 40 years old, and they featured in the Pride film from 2014. And please support them if you can. You know, even last year, unfortunately, they had their windows smashed in. They need support. They do not have a website as yet, but they're opening. They announced they're opening very shortly. So with that, I'd like to hand over to Joseph now.
Oh, thank you, Dani. Thank you. So Queer Britain is a charity working very hard to establish a national LGBTQ+ museum for everybody. So that's not just for LGBTQ+ people, that's for all of us, because the thing about queer history is that it belongs to everybody. And we believe that everybody should have access to that. There really is a missing gap in the cultural landscape. So LGBTQ+ history has been kind of obscured and scattered through other collections and other museums and personal collections, and actually within private collections as well, because so much of our history really sits within our homes. Now we very firmly believe that there should be a central place that brings this all together and makes every time of the year History Month for LGBTQ+ people, building on the wonderful work that LGBT History Month have done. We also think it's a massively missing gap when you think that there are museums in London for fans, for magic, for brands, for sewing machines, for dentists, but nothing so personal as sexuality and gender identity, the stuff that really, to a great extent, makes us who we are. There's a fascinating set of stories that have really been undertold, and we want to be a part of pulling back the cover from that and sharing those stories more broadly. One of the reasons that it's so important is that if you can't see yourself reflected consistently in the culture, in the mainstream, it can be very hard to imagine a best of all possible futures for yourself and the sort of life that you want to live. Now, an example of this is that when I was 14 years old, and anybody who's seen me speak before will have seen me wave this book around, I found this at a jumble sale just at exactly the right moment that I needed it. Age 14, feeling very anxious, becoming aware that I was gay, that I perhaps wasn't like the other boys in my school. And I didn't know anything about Oscar Wilde at the time. But what really struck me was that in this 1909 printing of this book, some poetry had been written in the front by somebody called H.A. Hopkins. And what really caught my eye was the lines, I'll face the world and laugh to scorn the scoffers of my state, and I will conquer. And it was the very underlining of that phrase, and I will conquer, that really made me feel that I could stand up and be myself, and that I could see myself back in the past. I could see myself in history, possibly for the first time ever. And that gave me a tremendous amount of strength and really helped me shape my identity. Now, in terms of the museum, we're working towards a 2025 opening. And what that will look like will be some permanent exhibition, but also we're going to be creating rolling blank exhibition space that we can invite guest curators in order to be able to repeatedly tell an endless series of different stories, sometimes addressing communities, sometimes addressing more sort of popular subjects. Now, if you want to find out more about it, I would ask you to go visit www.queerbritain.org.uk. If you want to follow the project, you can sign up for the mailing list there, and you can also see the kind of things that we've been up to, and also how you can get involved. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Joseph. That was great.
Thank you. Yes.
Great to know more about the museum and what you're planning.
Thank you.
It definitely feels like it's time. You know, we need this museum. So I'm really excited. I've signed up.
And frustrated to be waiting a while, but it's going to be great when it comes.
Any project as serious as this needs to be developed seriously.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
In terms of visitors to London, I wonder if I could ask each of you where you would recommend to go to, or what thing in London. What's your must see in London? I'll ask Dani the guide first of all.
So I would definitely head to the British Museum because there it's just laid out straight in front of you, of course with a guide because you'll need to search these things out. But there's so much LGBT history in the British Museum that goes back centuries and millennia. One of my favorite things is actually a Greek vase as a water jug that depicts Sappho, the lesbian poet that was living on the island of Lesbos, and it dates to around the 5th century, you know, for about 450 BC. So it's one of the rare examples that we actually can uncover some lesbian history as well as some gay history and bisexual history as well, which is really intriguing. And most recently, they've put the Rosetta Stone on their list as having some queer history too, because of William Banks, who was actually exiled out of England for committing homosexuality when it was still illegal, and he is one of the helpers in deciphering that the Rosetta Stone could actually be 3 exact translations of the same thing.
Joseph, I'm going to put you on the spot now. What would you recommend? Where's your number one spot be?
Oh God, there's so many things. I mean, well, first of all, I don't think you can do better than an LGBTQ tour of the V&A. Is a really fascinating tour. You can't beat a bottle of Prosecco in Soho Square on a hot afternoon, which is just brilliant for people watching.
That's a great answer.
I think I'm just, it's just the, having been no further than my kitchen and living room for the past few months, itching to do that.
Thank you, Joseph.
On the gay businesses as well, like goes the word.
Yeah.
Dani?
Yeah, so many things. I mean, I think definitely spend some time in Tate Britain. You know, it's very much a hidden gem, you know, seek out all of those queer artists. But also, yeah, if it's hot, head to Hampstead Ponds. You've got the men's ponds, the women's ponds. That's just a great place to kind of escape the busy city and enjoy the hot weather and cool down in the ponds. And definitely book a show at Above the Stag. You know, plan your trip carefully.
I'm gonna kind of answer my own question. I don't do LGBT tours, but one of the places that I go through frequently on the tours that I do is Trafalgar Square, and I'm so proud of what they've done to change the street architecture in Trafalgar Square, right in central London. And I'll bring it up now. That I think this is fantastic. And it's all around, all the crossing signs, the walk don't walk signs. There are about 5 different versions, and to me, it's a pride in diversity, and I'm proud of London's diversity, and it's proud that we are demanding toleration of diversity. So this is kind of not quite an answer to my own question. About what to look for in London. Just before we finish, and we're quite near the end of our time now, but just before we finish, I'm going to bring onto the screen the Guide London webpage. And the Guide London webpage, Guide London is a website that's a portal between the whole world and guides in London. We have an events section, and there's here we have the Pride in London events page, and it's one of many events that you can search depending on what you're interested in and the time of year that you're coming. This is one of the ways that you can find out what to do in London. We have tour descriptions, and crucially, vitally, we have the ability to book a guide to take you on the date that you're able to go, when eventually. I hope it's not too far away, but people will be coming back into London, and that's a great way for them to do it. So I think we're out of time, guys. But all 3 of you, Joseph, Dani, thank you so much, and that's it from us today.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you.